Live. Hello. Hello, and we're live. Thanks very much for joining us tonight on our science fiction book club. Welcome to the station if anybody's there. It's a really bad night tonight, and we're expecting another storm to hit us in the wee hours, and we've just been hit by one. Excuse me. I think we've been hit by Storm Dudley yesterday, and Storm Eustace is on the way. Oh, I put that up there. Give me one wee second, folks. I've actually got too much light on in here. There we go. That's better. Get my head all shiny there. So, yeah, thanks for joining us if anybody's there for the book club. We're about to hit chapter 10 today. A great wee chapter again, I think. And one of these ones that helps build our tension as we go and gives us another couple of interactions, I suppose, between characters. And there's a little bit of an adjustment with time in this chapter as well. Excuse me. And it's interesting because I've given this chapter, as much as we call them chapter 10, there are no chapters within Dune at all. I've called this one the Weirding Room, based kind of on the descriptions of the previous chapter. But of course, it's a very interesting term, isn't it? This weirding room is actually, what we're told is it's a Wet-Planet Conservatory, full of plants that would be suited to an environment other than Arrakis, I suppose. Excuse me. And within that, then, we get a little bit of an ecology lesson within this chapter. We get the intrigue moving, and we get an interaction with Jessica, I suppose, from another Bene Gesserit, who's quite an interesting character, the Lady Margot Fenring. So let me just get our ebook set up here. I think we have it on to, there we go. That's a bit better light. I'll give it a bit brighter tone there. Something a bit warmer. And as usual, we'll start off with the epigraph of this chapter, chapter 10. And here we go. What had the Lady Jessica to sustain her in her time of trial? Think you carefully of this Bene Gesserit proverb, and perhaps you will see. Excuse me. Any road followed precisely to its end leads precisely nowhere. Climb the mountain just a little bit to test that it's a mountain. From the top of the mountain, you cannot see the mountain. And this is from Muad'Dib's Family Commentaries by the Princess Irulan. Excuse me, as always. My throat's a bit prickly. Just a wee second. Sorry, folks. We're not quite. I'll just run in with the dogs there, because my wife and son are away out on a driving lesson, and kind of the house is all abandoned. So running about getting a few chores done just before I came online, which is why I'm just a bit and here now. There's Cynthia saying hello. Hello, Cynthia. How are you? I'm going to have a comment of yours I must respond to. You have a few comments there this week that I haven't got around to responding, but thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. I'm very tickly tonight in the throat, I have to say. I may have to slurp some honey at some point. I think it's all the having to have the hot air on in the house all the time with the extreme cold outside and going back and forward. I think it just messes with my sinuses quite a bit. I don't know why, but I always just start coughing when I come on here. Give it about 10-15 minutes or so, it goes away. Must be some kind of learned response or something. So this epigraph is all about Jessica. And what did she have to sustain her during her time of trial? We're told about, we get this Bene Gesserit proverb. And what it tells us, any road followed precisely to its end leads precisely nowhere. Climb the mountain just a little bit to test that it's a mountain. From the top of the mountain, you cannot see the mountain. And I've made a couple of wee notes about this, just offhand. Anything that leads precisely to nowhere, I suppose. And of course, the joke, if we know it, is that this book borrows heavily from Samuel Butler's Erewhon. And of course, Erewhon is an anagram of nowhere, or now here. So not that I think that's got anything to do with it here, but I just thought it was an interesting little musing. But yeah, this little statement's about Jessica and what does she have her to sustain in her time of trial, that kind of thing. Excuse me. I couldn't get you to talk that up, could you? Sorry, my throat's racking me at the moment. Thanks very much. Yeah, what does she have in her time? Yeah, this Bene Gesserit proverb. And I suppose it's a good question. It talks about not following a road precisely. And this discussion of climbing a mountain just a little bit to test that it's a mountain. From the top of the mountain, you cannot see the mountain. I've made a wee comment that this just basically stinks of general semantics. The map is not the territory, this kind of thing, which is an influence on this book, Alfred Korzybski's General Semantics. And Herbert had worked for, can't remember the gentleman's name, for an individual who's heavily involved in this society. So general semantics, the idea kind of the map is not the territory, is one of those things, if you like. It's probably its most famous aphorism, if you like. And of course, you can see a mountain from the top of it. All you got to do is look straight down. It's one of those ones that's a little bit silly, I think, and almost paradoxical. Any road followed precisely to its end leads precisely nowhere. So it's an odd little thing. It has a sort of reek of Confucianism or something like that about it. But I suppose it's just about... I'd argue maybe just going with the flow of things, if you see what I mean. But there you go. So it's an interesting little proverb to start off with. And I suppose that leading you nowhere, as I said, nowhere is now here, if you like. And as I said, I thought about the Erewhon reference. But in this chapter, we have another slight shift in time, just from previous action again. So it's almost all staggered and reiterative. Thank you very much. Thank you. Excellent. It seems that juice is much better for the throat than coffee, I think. Excellent. There we go. Time for the precious fluids. Okay, so there is a slight shift in time here with the action. We're at the end of the south wing of this part of the building, and we're looking at a set of metal stairs that spiral upwards. And there's an oval door to this at the top of these stairs. And it's a particularly... Jessica, we see, is noting that it's a particularly odd shape. And why an oval door in a place like this? And I thought it was an interesting question. As we're getting Herbert setting up the scene outside, what we were told is the weirding room, but we're going to find out, as I said, it's a Wet-Planet Conservatory. So we get a little bit of setting up of the scene outside, and then we'll go to the interior, I suppose. And the one thing that I thought about is why the oval door, this palm print. Excuse me. And there is a bit of a mystery as to who's made this room. But I actually thought, in terms of what else is described within Dune so far, that's oval is actually Jessica's face, isn't it? And I was wondering, as much as is this door to entice her, in as much as the headboard was to entice Paul in his bedroom. But is this a Bene Gesserit enticement? Possibly not, but I just sort of, what else is oval? Why does she think it's odd? Well, it's her that's described that way with the oval face. So we have this more staging, a bit of mise-en-scene, and we'll get the exterior, as I said, of the conservatory. We'll get the interior shortly. And we're also told that there are windows beneath the spiral staircase, through which we can see the great white sun of Arrakis. And the sun in this chapter is kind of used to give us a sense of foreboding, of time moving and approaching the end of the Atreides' first day on Arrakis. If you imagine, it's almost a bit like that sped up part, at the end of Dracula, with racing against the sun going down. Not quite in the same speed or urgency or anything like that. But we get a little bit of movement of time. And as I said, we've had little shifts back. It's almost like almost 2 steps back, 1 forward kind of thing, if you know what I mean. In terms of how the action in the last 3 chapters have played out. And as I said, this one takes place at a certain point where Paul is probably dealing with the Gom Jabbar at this point right now. And so we get a little bit of setting up. I said the windows beneath the spiral give us a good look at the white sun of Arrakis. And this is from outside this room with its kind of metal staircase and handle, etc. Whenever we move inside the room, I suppose there's an interesting way how metal is talked about in this chapter. But we get the full blast of the Arrakeen sun, if you like. And whenever we go into the conservatory, that light is going to be filtered. So it won't be white light anymore. It'll be yellow light. It'll be kinder to the plants, etc., that are in the room. Bojack saying, I have to go, but I'll be back. No worries, Bojack. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch up with you later. Excuse me. I think the throat's getting better now, folks. So I do apologize. So yeah, long shadows stab down the hall. It gives us the sun's movement in this chapter as well. I think a little bit in the previous chapter with the slats, but gives us a bit of dramatic effect here. You know, the long shadows looking like knives, this kind of thing. The long shadows stab down the hall. And we're told harsh side lighting picked out bits of dried earth on the open metalwork of the steps. And so again, we get this little bit, there's muck and dirt in here as well. And just picking out particular words, I suppose, as I said, long shadows stabbed. The imagery that Herbert's using here is of threat and danger, and should help build that. It's helping to build that sense of tension that we have. So we've just had Paul come under attack, and we kind of know he's racing here. But here's Jessica looking up at this strange, mysterious room, and we're wondering, is there a real imminent sense of danger for her? Of course, she's just been through a bit of that as well with Mapes. She's had a kind of almost a fatal test, has been rewarded with the crysknife that she keeps concealed under her bodice at the minute. And we also have an association with Jessica at this point constantly with coldness, or how she feels about not just this house, the city, all sort of things. She feels cold consistently. So, and as it's all taking us towards the end of the first day of the Atreides on Arrakis. And it's going to be quite an eventful day, really, isn't it? So we get the detail of the stairs. I said that metallic thing here, really, that's emphasized. And metal, I think, whenever we meet things of metal within this chapter, they'll be pointed out, and they are, I suppose, pointed out so they can be shown in contrast, I suppose, to the natural plants and so on. So, of course, we get another little one of these details. And again, as I said, the rail is cold to Jessica. Again, this feeling of cold. But we get this little interesting lock, what we call a palm lock. And essentially, we'd think of it as a kind of biometric device these days. The door has no handle, a depression on the surface, a palm lock. Aha, what's this? And quite interestingly, we get a little bit of info about palm locks, another piece of technology from Jessica. And we have also an entry in the terminology of the Imperium at the back of the book as well. So the terminology of the Imperium tells us that it's a lock or seal opened by contact with the palm of the human hand to which it is being keyed. So in other words, a biometric lock. I've never thought such things are good ideas, to be honest. And of course, Jessica has a bit of knowledge of this as well. Surely not a palm lock, she told herself. A palm lock must be keyed to one's individual hand's shape and palm lines. But it looked like a palm lock. And there were ways to open any palm lock, as she had learned at school. So this is another one of these. As we're checking this thing out, there's ways to open this, as Jessica has learned at Bene Gesserit school. And I think that's quite interesting. So Jessica gives us a wee bit of a lesson on this. It has to be keyed to an individual's hand shape and palm lines. And there are ways to open it, as she's learned in, obviously, Bene Gesserit school. Excuse me. So we get to see Jessica's Bene Gesserit skills in action here as she goes about opening this lock. This is to do with her prana bindu skills, I suppose. She checks that she's unobserved. Oh, goodness, excuse me. Right, everything's going off and on tonight. Let me see. Not until tomorrow. Sorry, apologies about that. Something got off on my phone there. Hopefully that'll be the end of the interruptions, folks. Yeah, she checks that she's unobserved, and then she uses the gentlest of pressures to distort the lines, a turn of the wrist, another turn, a sliding twist of the palm across the surface, and we get that satisfactory click. And the description of that is very much as if a locksmith is going to work on picking a lock or something like that. And her hand is the key, I think, is an interesting thing there. Cynthia says Thufir has already been in the conservatory, so why is it special that she can open it with the BG tricks? Good point, Cynthia. Yeah. That's a very good point, I suppose. I'm wondering if they've just opened it some other way, perhaps. But how did Thufir get in, I suppose? At the end of the day, they could have just forced the door and then put it back there, I suppose. I don't think, yeah. It makes you actually wonder what good is a key when you just remove the door, if that comes to it. It's a very good point, Cynthia, and it's not one that's made clear, I think, because Thufir is most definitely in this room. Why it's special? She can open the Bene Gesserit tricks. Perhaps he has the key for it, by the way. That's maybe it. As much as that this is a thing that's maybe there is a key for it. Because I suppose it's in the property of, is it Hazimir Fenring? Previously, I think. But it's a really good question. Yeah, how does he get in? What's the point of the mysterious jiggery pokery of this lock if other people have already been in it? And as we know that she hasn't given it her attention because Thawit's cleared it, he's been in. So yeah, kind of it does take away a bit of the I suppose the impact of, hey, that's kind of cool. There could be more than one way in as well. Yeah, the water's coming in from somewhere, isn't it? I suppose. And I'd imagine it does need tended. It's an interesting room, actually, I think. Meant to be another lesson on a number of levels, I think. But yeah, we get and I was going, there we are. Something I was going, but isn't this great? We get to see Jessica's skills in action. And it's a bit of a, well, was that really necessary? Maybe it's just good practice, keep up with these skills, And where are we? Just the cat. Let me see where I'm at. And again, of course, as continues to happen throughout these few chapters here, as we've been on Arrakis, sound is the major interrupter. The thing that breaks up the action or diverts characters' attention from one thing to another. And we get another sound here. Quickly diverting Jessica's attention. Of course, it's Mapes bombing down the hall. Hurrying footsteps in the hall beneath her. She lifted her hand from the door, turned, saw Mapes come to the foot of the stairs. Of course, this lines up with the action from the previous chapter, kind of gives us a sense of where we're at in the time frame here, but we know we've moved backwards in time a little bit. There are men in the Great Hall say they've been sent by the Duke to get the young master. Mapes said, they have the ducal signet and the guard has identified them. She glanced at the door back to Jessica. And of course, we get another little bit more thought about Mapes, a cautious one, this Mapes. That's a good sign. Caution being, again, as we keep pointing out, the major trait, I suppose, associated with Paul and the Bene Gesserit. Excuse me. Now, where are we? And of course, yeah, anyway, turn over. And quite an interesting little thing here. We get the information relayed to Mapes from Jessica. He's in the 5th room from the end of the hall. The small bedroom, Jessica said. If you have trouble waking him, call on Dr. Yui in the next room. Paul may require a wake shot. And I just thought that wake shot, they drug their children, basically, is the implication there. Paul's excitement gets him some sleepy juice. If you see what I mean. Yeah, interesting. And here we go. Again, Mapes cast a piercing stare at the oval door, and Jessica thought she detected loathing in the expression. Before Jessica could ask about the door and what it concealed, Mapes had turned away, hurrying back down the hall. And again, this is another little motif of Mapes here. Information succinct, delivered to the point, gone, off to do the work, basically. And it mirrors exactly how Paul was interacting with her in the previous chapter. And in fact, actually, how Paul will be interacting with her in a minute in terms of the timeline of what's happening here. And I think that's really good, because it keeps a level of consistency with the character, if you see what I mean. And so Mapes makes sense, and we're getting to see Mapes a bit disjointed, if you like, in terms of time. And Mapes' piercing stare, we talk about glances and silences and silent glances, says it all, loathing in the expression. And it's a bit like Paul not knowing not to call her back, if you see what I mean, in the previous chapter, knowing that she's given all the information that she can. This is kind of a similar thing, and she kind of doesn't know why. Wonder what the loathing's about. And of course, here it comes. How it has certified the place. And I've just put next to that, oh, groan. So how it has certified the place. So it can't be anything too terrible. Can't be anything too terrible in here. And I've just put a wee joke, how it's security is getting to the point with us where it must almost be. So I'm just trying to get a book to flatten this down here a wee bit. There we go. It must be a joke by now, surely. I mean, I'm almost hysterical. I'm starting to write funny notes in my book about how stupid this is and how its security is. I was actually gotten to the point where I have contemplated making fake adverts for how it's security. Excuse me. But of course, we have foreknowledge. It's all a bit ironic as well, I suppose. Can't be anything too terrible. But the fact that every time someone puts the trust in how its security is going to end up in quite a funny, sad and strange place at the end of this chapter, I think. And more on a sort of personal level for the Atreides, I think. So Jessica enters. To push the door, it swung inward into a small room with another oval door opposite. And the other door has a wheel handle, an airlock. And again, the wheel motif, it's almost like a bit of a, I suppose the wheel on a ship, that kind of thing. I've drawn little wheels on my notes, and that's the kind of way I've drawn them, if you see what I mean. But the airlocks, those round kind of wheels. And let me just get to where we are. An airlock, Jessica thought. She glanced down, saw a door prop fallen to the floor of the little room. The prop carried Howat's personal mark. The door was left propped open, she thought. Somebody probably knocked the prop down accidentally, not realizing the outer door would close on a palm lock. She stepped over the lip into the little room. Why an airlock in a house? And of course, this makes her think of exotic creatures, sealed off special climates, and those two particular words go ping in Jessica's head, special climate. So, yeah, we get a little bit of info here. And I'll stop and get a few comments. There's Babs Bilo. Hi, Babs. Thanks for joining us. So how it missed such an easily open door, which is supposed to be secure? And Cynthia said, Mapes' expression mirrors the emotions on the faces of people looking at the palm trees that Jessica and Yui were discussing earlier. That's a very good point, Cynthia. I've actually made a wee thing about that later on. We'll get to it, which was in relation to I suppose, the number of palm trees to people. And then we also have a comparison of this room to people. So yeah, it is. It's the, and I don't think there'd be any hope, I suppose, in Mapes. It's just disgust, isn't it? Yeah, I'll see whenever I find that, or it's up ahead somewhere. Let's see. But the special climate, it makes sense, she thinks, on Arrakis. Yeah, we're going to have other plants here. Pretty much, and we're told, pretty much the driest of off-world plants needs to be irrigated. And of course, this little prop that's fallen down, there's a wee question there. How did somebody accidentally knock it down? And we're assuming maybe if Howit's been and checked the room, maybe it was him that accidentally knocked it down. If you see what I mean, a bit of clumsiness. I get the sense it's got Howit's mark on it as well. You kind of think, what's he doing? Is he going around putting little H stickers on things to go, yeah, it's got the Howit stamp of approval. I find it quite funny and almost to the point of absurd if it wasn't contained within a sort of serious plot. And I think there's meant to be a degree of face palming, I suppose, from the reader here with our foreknowledge. So we get a little bit about airlocks as well. Let me just see, find the right little section on the page here. Airlocks. Description. Bear with me a wee second just to find where I was at. Oh, no, maybe I've got jumped ahead of myself, actually. Let's just see. So she steps into the lip of the room at special climate. That's where I'm at. Let's see. Sorry, jumping ahead of myself. Why an airlock in a house? She asked herself. And she thought suddenly of exotic creatures sealed off in special climates. Special climate. That would make sense on Arrakis, where even the driest off-planet growing things had to be irrigated. So we get the door behind her swinging closed, and she catches it and props it open securely with the stick that Howit had left. And again, she faces the wheel-locked inner door, seeing now a faint inscription etched in the metal above the handle, and she recognized Gallic words and read, "O man, here is a lovely portion of God's creation. Then, stand before it and learn to love the perfection of thy supreme friend." Which is a very interesting turn of phrase, I think. So, Gallic, of course, if we're checking out the Imperial terminology of the Imperium, is the official language of the Imperium. We're told it's a hybrid of Anglo-Slavic with strong traces of cultural specialization terms adopted during the long chain of human migrations. So I think that's Anglo, sounds a bit like a combination. I think we've talked about this before, probably a combination of Anglo and Indo-European, Anglo-Saxon, Indo-European, and then Slavic languages. So another hybrid. And the little quotation here, the inscription's quite, "Oh man," okay, male-centric. "Here is a lovely portion of God's creation," so it has a religious attitude towards it. "Stand before it and learn to love the perfection of thy supreme friend." So referring to God as a friend, interesting enough. And of course, at this point, Jessica enters the room. She puts her weight on the wheel, turns left, and the inner door opens. And I think this is a very interesting wee description. The inner door opens, and there's a gentle draft that feathered her cheek and stirred her hair. And I've made a wee note here, actually. And I don't know if you remember how Leto, whenever Leto and Jessica are together, how Leto touched Jessica as a touch of her arm, adjustment of her hair. And I've just made a wee note. Remember how Leto touched her, and it wasn't like this. In terms of the description, gentle draft feathered her cheek, stirred her hair, and it's a much nicer, softer thing, isn't it? But it's almost the same kind of interaction. Though there's no human agent, no human agency behind it. I just thought it was interesting. And there's a change in the air and a richer taste. Let's see. Now, she looked through into the massed greenery. Let's just get this bit here. She swung the door wide, looked through it into the massed greenery with yellow sunlight pouring across it. A yellow sun? She asked herself. Then, filter glass. Aha. The light of this white sun previously outside of the room, cold. I suppose then the natural sunlight of Arrakis. And we've gone into this room, and here we have the filter glass, and of course a yellow sun. The light's being filtered to make it warmer and softer. And I've put mystery. And then we're told, of course, here we are. A yellow sun, filter glass. She stepped over the sill, and the door swung closed behind. A Wet-Planet Conservatory, she breathed. Potted plants and low prune trees stood all about. And we get another list of these plants here. Here we go. So we have a mimosa, a flowering quince, a sondagi, green-blossomed planicenta, green and white striped acarso, roses, even roses. And we're getting a sense of, I don't know, it's one of those interesting things where we think about extravagance and we think about terms of wealth and opulence and all of this kind of thing. This is real extravagance on this planet, isn't it? These plants that wouldn't have a chance really on outside. And yeah, again, she bends over to take a smell of a pink blossom, takes in the room with her Bene Gesserit eye. And once again, sound comes in. A little bit of separation of interest within the text. Rhythmic noise invaded her senses. Let's see. Maybe Mapes, just catching up. Mapes' expression mirrors the emotions of faces of people looking at the palm trees that Jessica knew you were discussing earlier. Maybe Mapes was showing disdain for the noble-born, or the Fremen were thinking the Atreides were going to be no better than the Harkonnens. It says Babs, yeah. So they said Babs agreed. And it could indicate the Fremen attitude towards the Count and Lady Fenring, who had previously lived in this house. That's a good point, Cynthia. Babs says, Cynthia, good point. Here you go. Babs is agreeing with you. Count Fenring could be quite the asshole, couldn't he? Wouldn't surprise me he was a dick to him. Very good, Babs. I've come up with a few identifiers of a few people who might be Fenring. We can have a wee chat about them later. I think Fenring's a really interesting character, both him and his wife. Yeah, and we've got some questions to ask about Fenring, I suppose. And whenever we get to the letter, I suppose we'll have a wee quick nosy at him at the back of the book. So this rhythmic noise has invaded Jessica's senses. And of course, she parts this. You can imagine this, all these leaves in this 10-foot square room, 10-meter square room. She parted a jungle overlapping of leaves, looked through to the center of the room. A low fountain stood there, small with fluted lips. The rhythmic noise was a pealing, spooling arc of water falling thud gallop onto the metal bowl. And there we go. Again, we have this. There's another metal item, this metal bowl. This is just Jessica sort of just checking out the place, really running the eye over the place with the Bene Gesserit eye. And here we go, a little bit more of Bene Gesserit skills. Remember that this is what I was sort of saying about the epithet at the start. You know, what has Jessica got to sustain her during her time of trial? And I suppose it can be read on a few different levels. And you could maybe think of this little place sustaining Margot Fenring while she's been on this horrible planet, that kind of thing. But it's quite possible that it's the Bene Gesserit skills that she has, and we get her to see her using one again here. She sent herself through the quick sense-clearing regimen, began a methodical inspection of the room's perimeter. It appeared to be about 10 meters square from its placement above the end of the hall and from subtle differences in construction. She guessed it had been added onto the roof of this wing long after the original building's completion. So yeah, she's immediately looking over the perimeter, checking out. I mean, the level of detail. If you think about it, she's making estimations on the room's construction. Based on its architecture, its position in the house, this kind of thing. And again, it's that detail of the Bene Gesserit eye, the little subtleties that they always notice. And then she takes a look at the south side of the room with this big filter glass separation. So yeah, I managed to get even a little map drawn of the room here. So of course the place is crowded with exotic wet climate plants. We had a list of a few of them there. And we get a little bit of tension, a little bit of dramatic tension as we go in. The kind of peering through the jungle. Is there anyone in here? Something rustled. And of course we find out that it's a clock set servo, which has pipe and hose arms, and they just basically fine spraying the room. And again, Jessica gets this fine spray of dampness. It misted her cheeks, we're told. And it's almost as if there's something healing, something gentle about this place to Jessica. Something welcoming, if you see what I mean. This room's almost treating her the way she wishes Leto the First would, I suppose. It's something like that. It's the way that the interactions of what happens to her in the room mimic, I think, his coldness previously. Could be. Fenring seemed to be a Loki type, says Bob, seeding chaos wherever his plans pass. It's a very good point. We're going to talk about Loki and Fenring, as in Fenrir the wolf, who is, of course, a child of Loki, along with Hel and the world's serpent, isn't it? Yeah. And I suppose, well, whenever we look at him, it's the Count Casimir. That bit's one name. Fenring, the surname's another, I think. But yes, indeed. And of course, yeah, very much Fenring. It's such a close word, isn't it? Fenrir the wolf, I think, is the mythological association with this man. We'll definitely have a wee look at him. Yeah, we'll have a wee chat. It's something that we could look at in detail. Actually, I just made a few notes. Fenrir foretold to kill Odin during Ragnarok, etc., will in turn be killed by Odin's son Vithar. Of course, pointing out that he bit off. We talked about hands, and Fenrir is the bit off the right hand of Tyr. But the other bit's more to do with the other part of the name, Casimir, which from Casimir's, Casimir's, which I think is from a proclaimer of peace. It's quite interesting. But I've actually got. We'll have a wee chat about it. I've got 3 possible candidates that I can see kind of elements of this guy's character, and actually, but yeah, proclaimer of peace is what Casimir means. So yeah, we'll get to it, Babs, definitely. He's an interesting character. I have to say, both him and Margot were really interesting. And I think people talk about who would you cast if you're going to put Casimir and Margot into the film, and for me it would always have been, in my head, they were always Peter Bowles and Penelope Keith. I think she actually plays a character called Margot as well. But from the what's the show? Is it To the Manor Born? That kind of thing. And if you know the two, they're British character actors. Peter Bowles and Penelope Keith, to me, would be, in my mind, are Casimir Fenring and Margot Fenring. That's what they would look like, and they have that kind of, I don't know, je ne sais quoi about them, So, of course, yeah, why an airlock, special climate, all of this stuff. We have this little, check it out. The mystery of this room, a Wet-Planet Conservatory. And there's a few things about this actually to do with the waste of, the use of water, etc. here. Oh, sorry, I've been turning my pages back. Water, 26, where are we? Water everywhere in this room. On a planet where water was the most precious juice of life, water being wasted so conspicuously that it shocked her to inner stillness. And it's once the realization of what this room is. On another planet, you probably wouldn't bat an eyelid at it, I suppose. That's the thing, isn't it? But here, it's any wonder Mapes takes a look at this place with contempt, you know. All of this water equals life. And Arrakis water is the most precious juice of life. That's how she puts it here. Hmm. And again, we have another one of these. We have a look out. So this stillness, sort of, again, we keep getting these noises that interrupt our characters when their thoughts. We get back to stillness again. And she has a look through the filter glass. I'll tell you what, one wee second, folks. There's Brad saying hello. Brad, how's it going? I'm going to pause because my nose is about to run down my face. Give me one wee second. I'm going to nip out and blow my nose. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, folks. Grab the toilet roll in case it needs to happen again. See me running off. Goodness gracious. So sorry about that. I know I'm either bunged up. It's one of those things with the weather, isn't it? It's hot or cold here at the minute, and it's on off, and I'm either bunged up on coffee or everything's running down my face. So I do apologise. Feeling a bit better after that. But yeah, morning, Brad. How's it going? Thanks for joining us. Brad says the guy who played Sir Humphrey in Yes Minister could have played the Twisted Mentat, or maybe it was how good the dialogue was. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's very good, isn't he? Hello, Holly. Everybody in that show is pretty good, but yeah, Humphrey's a very, very twisted. Yeah, the civil service, the British civil service, give you a sense of the Twisted Mentat, don't they, Brad? Yeah, I encountered a couple of Sir Humphrey types not too long ago down out of Belfast Maze Meadow. And they've got something coming to them at some point, but I intend to spank them quite hard one day. They were not nice people at all. There you go. I'm getting distracted, but yeah, sorry about that, folks. My big holly dolly's in here. Hello, you all right, big love? And we'll get back to it. So yeah, this water thing. The water thing. Where were we? She was having a wee look through the filter glass, I believe. Shocked into this inner stillness, she glanced out at the filter-yellowed sun hung low. It hung low on a jagged horizon above cliffs that formed part of the immense rock uplifting known as the Shield Wall. I can nearly speak tonight. I'll read that again. That formed part of the immense rock uplifting known as the Shield Wall. That's better. And she keeps thinking about this filter glass again, she thought. To turn a white sun into something softer and more familiar. Who could have built such a place? And I've written mystery. Who built this room? Of course, she goes Leto. I wonder, was it Leto? And we get a little, again, the Bene Gesserit mind working here. No, it wasn't him. It would have been like him, but he's too busy, doesn't have enough time, and has plenty of other problems to be getting on with. It wasn't him. And she's able to deduce that pretty quickly. But it's one of those little things that's left for us. And of course, we get a little bit. This was the bit I was looking for, actually. Sometimes when I do this, I think some bits of information should go with the other piece that's previous there. But it was about airlocks and houses. And so Jessica recalls this report for us, the reader, that many Arrakeen houses are sealed by airlock doors and windows to conserve and reclaim interior moisture. So that makes perfect sense, Tisby. Here's the kicker. Leto had said it was a deliberate statement of power and wealth for this house to ignore such precautions, its doors and windows being sealed only against the omnipresent dust. And excuse me, I thought this was a very interesting statement. It's a deliberate statement of wealth and power. Well, in that case, that made me wonder, what do wealth and power equate to here? And simply put, by opening up your house to exposure like this, in that sense, on this planet, wealth and power therefore equate to stupidity, waste, and greed. That's the way I look at it, based on that piece of information. Especially when it's such a dangerous place. And that you would think that, not everything works the same way every day, if you see what I mean. You would worry about the day certain things could happen, if you know what I mean. Particularly on such a planet, you would want to store water, just like the Fremen do. I suppose it's a question of, can you bring water in? Is it easily imported for the Harkonnen? Can they just bring it in, quite simply? And if that's the case, then they're not kind of really working within the natural system of the planet's water. If you see, we're not within the water table. It's easy to tell the difference between an older add-on as against a brand new construction. You wouldn't need to be a Bene Gesserit to work it out. Not really, especially in this bit where they're saying it's been stuck on the roof and it's clearly different. I am in agreement with you, Brad. It's sometimes these things are hyperbolic in a sense, if you know what I mean. And as much as all these skills with these people, sometimes they're quite silly. Yeah, sometimes I think it's possibly for the reader's benefit. At the same time, we're in a society that's what's the term I use? Atavistically retarded. So there's possibly a sense where, as much as a lot of people are schooled up, I don't know, some of the technology seems quite full on and sci-fi-ish, if you see what I mean. But yeah, it doesn't really. Especially when you put such an on, if every other door in the house is square, if you see it when this one's got an oval one, there is a suggestion of, it's like, hey, look at me. Well, so it does give us a question. One of our little mysteries: who built it? Because Jessica's pretty sure it wasn't Leto. He would have had to have had it built in a couple of weeks. Again, we could think of Hazimir and his wife. Possibly, did he do it for her, or is this a thing from the Imperial, or is it a thing from the Harkonnen have put in there out of sheer opulence? I can't remember, to be honest, who built it, so we'll maybe find out. Yeah, so it's a little mystery for now. And of course, this a lot of the houses have airlocks, doors, windows to preserve moisture in your house on a daily basis. But this house is different, and whoever lives here is different. So this building is all the building itself that they're in is a statement of power and wealth. And I suppose it makes you really ask, what does that mean? Why would you flaunt such a thing? To what's the whole point about that? That's power, but what does really power equate to in this case? I suppose. Yeah, it sounds like a Harkonnen thing to do, to degrade, I think, but this room is different, obviously. Let's have a wee look at it. It's described again. This room has been described differently, hasn't it? And this is the wee bit we were getting to, that we were talking about earlier. The room embodied a statement far more significant than the lack of water seals on outer doors. She estimated that this pleasure room used water enough to support 1,000 persons on Arrakis, possibly more. So let's see. So far, the room's been called the Weirding Room. Jessica's called it a Wet-Planet Conservatory, and then we've got this little pleasure room. And that's interesting because we're going to get that term pleasure coming up again in a wee second too with Margot's note. And I just thought it's interesting the way that sometimes people can be referred to in different ways, but it's not often you get a room with multiple appellations and monikers and nicknames. If the Weirding Room, you mean the Wet-Planet Conservatory? No, I mean the pleasure room. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Excuse me. I'll just catch up with your comments for a second, folks. Brad says, oh, just a sidetrack for a moment. One of the guys at work told me his betrothed got him a copy of the book Dune, so he slid up to me to discuss it when we had a lull in work. Happy days. Excellent. Groovy. Yeah, the more people reading Dune, the better, I think. It's a good thing. I think Dune as a book now, we'll not worry about what we say about the film, etc. But I think Dune as a novel is more timely than ever. Genuinely. So yeah, the more people reading it, the merrier, I think. Cynthia says the house probably loses more moisture to the outside than it uses to sustain the palms, maybe even the conservatory. And colleges in Canada saying on the retarded tech, compare with Frank's The Eyes of Heisenberg. Retarding technology is not it's not a new thing. I must have a wee look. It's one of those things where science fiction, I suppose, and if we consider Butler's book to be arguably the first book ever to discuss artificial intelligence, Erewhon, and its evolution, the evolution of machine intelligence over over animal intelligence. It's a thing that whenever I did a wee kind of history of science fiction colleges, just to talking about the evolution of science fiction has been a big thing since the theory of evolution. So I think it's one of those topics that's covered quite a bit. But yeah, I must get this out actually at some point. I've said I would do this. I've got many things to do, but I had done a kind of I suppose it was for my first year of Viva, and it was all of Frank's works, kind of categorizing and organizing them collectively, if you see what I mean. But like what you're doing there on retarded technology, so check out The Eyes of Heisenberg. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have to dig into a bit more of Frank's stuff as well, I think. But it's for me, it's all a long time ago, and I'm kind of come back to it. And the hardest thing for me always is coming back to stuff like this. Because I've done so much work on it. But the thing that brings me back is my shitty memory. That it's just, I've read that many old sci-fi books over the years and have absorbed so many of them and stories that sometimes I just sometimes the book, it's the idea that stays with you. Other times it's the world. Sometimes it's the thinking. Sometimes it's the characters, if you see what I mean. Dune and Eyes can be considered companion novels. Yeah. Eyes of Heisenberg. Where are we? Let me see. I've got a reasonably nice. What's my? Yeah, I quite like that one. Let me just see. So there we go. The Eyes of Heisenberg. There we are. And so we must have a wee run through all of Frank's stuff someday. Originally, I was going to do my PhD was sort of heading towards a literary biography of Frank initially, because that's kind of how a lot of them start, and it always seems a bit unsatisfactory. But simply put, that the Dune stuff was too big to do with all the rest of this stuff. So it's another one of those again, little paperbacks. £1.50 for this one back in the day. It wasn't great. Books used to be cheap. First published 1970, copyright 1966. This one. So yeah, and you'll often find the interesting thing with Frank's story. A lot of Frank's stories are often found them. If you go to chapter 3 of the PhD, you'll get there is a little literary quick one, literary biography of Frank in there, just the years of publication. But I think I give the short story and then the and often his green sleeves becomes the green brain, for example. So it's interesting. I think Frank's not as good at the shorter work. I think his chunkier books are better. But the one exception, sorry, two exceptions to that would be The Dragon in the Sea, and I think Dune Messiah is a really tight short book, if you know what I mean, certainly compared to the other ones. But it's one of the things we talked about. Brian mentions that his dad's not very good at handing in shorter works, and if you see what I mean, tends to, and we can probably see why, you know. Brad Rose says, I tried to listen to Erewhon. Alas, I only made it as far as when the main character was ill or sad. I'd be put to trial for it. So where things start to get interesting, I think then I got busy. Yeah, in many ways he's an ideas man, says Colleges. Brad, yeah, it's I mean, Erewhon wasn't on my radar in terms of I read it because of Frank Herbert and Dune. And there's Erewhon Revisited, which is not as good. Excuse me. Again, it's one of those things. It's a Victorian book. It's a thing of its times. Some people would find it a bit hard to read these days, but it is one of those ones that's a kind of topsy-turvy, everything's backwards kind of thing. And it's, the Book of the Machines really is the really interesting bit on it, I think. But it's not too bad. I'd say it'd be much funnier to a Victorian, if you like. Again, but Samuel Butler thinks of Erewhon as a gentle satire. So it's one of those ones where what the author thought of it isn't necessarily what other people thought of it. Excuse me. But yeah, in terms of we were talking about evolution. The big spat in Victorian society was between Samuel Butler and Charles Darwin, and it was did quite a lot of research into works on Butler. It's a very one-sided spat because Darwin was afraid of Butler's vehemence, and as I said, Butler didn't get that he was being vehement as coming across as aggressive, I think. But there's a bit of a relationship between their families as well that goes back a bit. So it is they're interesting. It's an interesting enough one, but yeah, if you can make it through it, I think it's pretty good. I enjoyed it, but put it this way, Brad, when I was reading it, and I was going through it with a fine tooth comb with a pen and a whole bunch of books on Samuel Butler at the same time, but I got surprised at the things that were in it, really, and I just kept going with it. I find it really interesting. That I hadn't heard of much of Butler before, and I've found his ideas way ahead of the game for 1870 something, you know. So it's one of those things. There's a whole bunch of satirical kind of pastoral science fiction stories like that, and I'm trying to think of a few. And again, they're products. There's things like The Well at the World's End, and I suppose Edward Bellamy's Looking Backward. Kind of all enough, a bunch of the Sleeper Shall Awaken type stories are like that as well. But it is one of those ones where we get the guy who's separated from this society, arriving in the new land or new country, and really exploring his own society by looking at theirs. But it's there's Bob saying, do go back to it, listen well, and you'll hear the influences upon you. Yeah, I mean, some of them are gobsmacking. They're only there. There's one bit on a page, and you realize, holy, this is prescient. They're talking about people who are prescient. And then you go, whoa, the preborn, what's going on here? And the play, and you start really going, shit, this is in June. And then, of course, the Butlerian jihad it's particular that whenever I think within, if I can remember this correctly, there's a sort of a professor of unreason. I think if that's right, kind of. Or am I mixing up an ABC Warriors story? I know there's a professor of unreason in that. But it is about this, why the Erewhonians don't have, complicated machines. And it's once you've been through Dune, if you know Dune well and you hit Erewhon by accident, and I did. For me, it was just, I'm going to follow up the word Butlerian jihad. That's it. I'm going to follow that to wherever it leads me and see what that's about. And I went, okay, that takes me to Samuel Butler. That takes me nowhere to Erewhon. and it changed. So I was 3 months into my PhD when I read Erewhon Revisited, and it completely changed my PhD. And I decided to approach it from a thematic point of view and really focus on. And then, you see, I entered it thinking it's all ecology, isn't it? This book's all ecology and the dangerous hero, and I was wrong. Not it is that, but that's not the major theme of Dune at all. Once you hit Butler, it makes a lot of sense. So it changed everything for me. It really did, and I was kind of very worried about it and kind of interested at the time because I've got something to get my teeth into, and nobody's made this connection. Not in this way and not in this detail. It was the one thing that my PhD got praised for, actually, more than any other thing, was the whole Butler connection and the whole evolutionary thing in the actual PhD Viva. But yeah, it's a good story. If you enjoy reading things like Gulliver's Travels and you don't mind a time disconnect or a culture disconnect, then it's grand, And if it's a lot of these things, actually, they can be tough to take in large doses, and you can take them episodic. So often, if I find something tricky to read, particularly something that's very large work, break it up into episodes and just take your time with it. But it depends if you're going to listen to it to enjoy or to work at. And I honestly read most things to enjoy and listen to them. I'm not sitting making notes all the time. I do think a lot about things in my own head, but I don't quite tend to do things in this level of detail all the time, which is kind of why I enjoy doing this, I suppose, as well. Brad said, Babs, yeah, I know it was getting the good stuff, unusual things just started, so I know that's where it kicked off with sci-fi concepts. Yeah, and they're big time. They are. It's a hugely influential book. And I'd argue I don't really know why it's not better known. But it's yeah, and as I said, there is if you read Vril, or The Coming Races, it's also known, by Edward Bulwer Lytton. It's a companion book to Erewhon, and the two authors are inextricably linked, and the two books are inextricably linked together, and you can consider them as Victorian, the discussion that's within Victorian society over Darwinian evolution on one hand and Lamarckian evolution on the other, which is soft inheritance. And we'll see aspects of both of those things in Dune. And of course, the drug that's in Vril, the little thing, the ubiquitous drug, is called Vril. And if you look into the history of Bovril and things like that, it's really interesting. And the drug Vril has a lot of similarities to melange. In fact, there are lots of science fiction drugs out there. Loads of sci-fi drugs out there, but not many like melange. I think I've pointed at a couple. That Vril is one, and Fluid Karma from Southland Tales. Those two drugs present similar properties of melange. My coffee is cold. Ugh. Was it? Can anybody tell me that the film, they say that the advantage of drinking cold coffee is that one can't taste the coffee. So if you can name that film and who's saying that, that'll be an interesting one. That's one of my favorite quotes about cold coffee. So where do we get to, folks? The message. I think obviously, this. Well, we're just backing up a wee bit here. The idea of this pleasure room, this weirding room. Of course, weird to do with fate, not weird, strange. This is the bit that we were talking about earlier, I suppose. Deliberate statement of power. I've put that this enough water to support 1,000 purpose people on Arrakis. One palm tree. I think this is what we were talking about earlier, Cynthia. One palm tree equals 5 people on Arrakis. One off-planet conservatory equals 1,000 people. That was my wee note. They embodied a statement for far more significant. And yeah, this does embody a statement for far more significant. This little bit. What is it then? Is the thing I've asked. What is the statement that's more significant than wealth and power here? It's possibly one of domination or something like that, or fear. But what is, I suppose, the response it solicits is the response that the room delivers, and the response it solicits from Shadow Mapes is loathing. So whatever the room's designed to do, the response is that people loathe it. Or certainly Mapes does as a representative of the Fremen. Now, here we go. So we have this table, and this is the first of these messages, I suppose. Not the first, it's the first obvious message, but it's not the real message. Jessica moved along the window, continuing to stare into the room. The move brought into view a metallic surface at table height beside the fountain. She glimpsed a white notepad and stylus there, partly concealed by an overhanging fan leaf. She crossed the table, noted Howat's day signs on it, studied a message written on the pad. So here we go. To the Lady Jessica, may this place give you as much pleasure as it has given me. Please permit the room to convey a lesson we learned from the same teachers. The proximity of a desirable thing tempts one to overindulgence. On that path lies danger. My kindest wishes, Margot Lady Fenring. Aha! Excuse me. I have to say I love the Fenrings, I think. Let's find out a wee bit about them if we can. So this is the message in plain sight that I've called this one. And of course, this is Howat's seen this. He's checked it. Of course, Howat's been all over the room. But it's quite we were talking about this room is the thing that's given Margot pleasure, which has made me possibly suspect was it Hazimir who built the room for her. But the room is to convey a lesson. And so here we have Margot Fenring's lesson. The proximity of a desirable thing tempts one to overindulgence. On that path lies danger. And of course, we're going to find out that that's the proximity, the closeness of something that you really want tends to tempt you into overindulgence, to have too much of a thing. Too much of anything's a bad thing, isn't it? That's for those who don't know, I suppose that you have a few of the sayings from the Oracle at Delphi, and know thyself, I suppose, is the one that most people know is know thyself. But the other one, there's a few. I suppose there's a number. The letter sigma is written there as well. But the other famous one is nothing in excess, or if you want to flip that, everything in moderation. So nothing in excess is one of those pieces of wisdom from the Oracle at Delphi, if you like. The proximity of desirable thing tempts one to overindulgence, not something in excess. Which is interesting because excess has another meaning as well, I suppose, to the point of death, really, isn't it? And we get a little bit of learning here, a little bit of a background. Jessica nodded, remembering that Leto had referred to the Emperor's former proxy here as Count Fenring. But the hidden message on the note demanded immediate attention, couched as it was in a way to inform her the writer was another Bene Gesserit. A bitter thought touched Jessica in passing. The Count married his lady. So, this is the wife of the Emperor's former proxy here, Count Hazimir Fenring. His wife is the Lady Margot Fenring. He is an agent for the Emperor. She is clearly a Bene Gesserit. And we find, for those of us who know about Hazimir Fenring, he's a really important character, hardly seen at all. And he's such an interesting character because of the whole what if possibilities. I'll just catch up with your comments a wee second or two, folks. Bob saying there's a drug called Tech in a series of books by William Shatner. Yes, Tech War. I think I've seen some of them on TV. Brad saying my home village of Nimbin is where the Aquarius Festival happened. Australia's equivalent to Woodstock. There are psychedelic paintings above the shops. Then I saw... I'm getting better at this, Brad. Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain, and I realized that's where the symbolism came from. Blew my mind Like what you said about accidentally stumbling across Erewhon. Excellent. Yeah, it is. It's fun when you find connections between things that often you hadn't thought about. And I'm going to go back now because that was a continual thread from Brad there. I'm going back up to your comments, Babs. Babs says, "For the life of me, can't." Oh, hang on. There's a drug called Tech and a series of books by William Shatner. For the life of me, can't remember anything else about it. The book kind of sucked. Well, yeah, I get that problem. Margot seemed a sweet and sensible BG. Bene Gesserit can't for the life of me spot what she saw in Hazimir. Ah, that's a good point, Babs. I think everything about Hazimir is false. It's an act. Whatever he is, he's not what he appears to be. Especially, he comes across as a kind of a slimy, sort of obsequious kind of guy. But we'll have to have a good look at him, actually. In fact, we'll maybe take a wee look just at the back of the book in a second here. Colleges and Councils in the room represents Harkonnen contempt. At one level for the people of Arrakis and their concerns, at another Presbyterian contempt typical in the Empire for environmental challenges. The Presbyterian fixation, yes. I agree, actually. That's why I asked the question. Colleges. Harkonnen were never on the world to avoid the spice addiction. They're on it long. They don't have, as long as they're not on it long term. I think you can pop on and hop off, and they do use planetary governors, I think. But yeah, you can visit Arrakis and bugger off, but it's only if you stay, I think, if you know what I mean. It's interesting that I think there's some people, somebody's done these kind of holiday adverts for, like, visit LV 426 and let's go to Arrakis and this kind of thing. And it's interesting that, I suppose you want a return ticket pretty quick, don't you? You don't want to outstay your welcome there. But in terms of what I wrote there, it's Herbert asking that sort of question. What's this about? And I asked myself a question. Well, hang on, let me just find it here. Yeah, what do power and wealth equate to here? And I'm saying stupidity, basically. This room's different. And embodied a statement far more significant than the wealth and power, if you see what I mean. Far more significant than that. So what is it? Excuse me. Just to read you the exact quote. But this room embodied a statement far more significant than the lack of water seals on outer doors. But we're not told what is. So I want to know what is it. And I agree. It's contempt, isn't it? It's up yours, your scum. That kind of full separation, if you like. And this universe has that natural separation. It's a feudal society where you have rich houses, great houses, minor houses, an emperor, and everyone else in a Pfeiffer-like system, which is a system of immobility, I suppose. Hazimir Fenring reminded me of Grima Wormtongue, Lord of the Rings. I actually got that. Who reminds me young Grima is I suppose he's not maybe too old. I always thought Piter had a hint of Grima Wormtongue about him, but I can see why. I think he's got more. I think he's got more of a bit of Gandalf about him. To be, if you see, I just see him as being something incredibly dangerous. And he's the one person who possibly can take Paul at the end of the book. Of all the people in the universe, Hazimir Fenring. And you have to go, what, that slimy, creepy guy? Really? And then I'm convinced, Babs, he's all appearances, everything about him. He's your kind of, I think him and Margot were kind of almost, your secret agent types, if you know what I mean. But they're not what they appear to be, I think, at all. And occasionally a hint of the man comes out, I think. We'll have to have a look at him in detail. Let's have a wee quick look at what it says about him in the back of the book. Just while we're on the character and his wife here, let's see. Because I do believe he's one of the few people. Well, let me see if we can find him. He actually gets his own entry in Appendix 4. The Almanac on Ashraf, the selected excerpts of the noble houses. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters in the entire story get an excerpt here, and he's one of them. It's the Emperor Leto Jessica Alia the Baron Harkonnen, Casimir Fenring, and Count Glossu Raban. So what does it say? It tells us he's 10,133 to 10,225. So he lives well past the events 191, goes past the events of Dune. A distaff cousin of House Carino, he was a childhood companion of Sharam IV. The frequently discredited Pirate History of Carino related the curious story that Fenring was responsible for the Chalmarchy which disposed of Elrond IX. All accounts agree that Fenring was the closest friend Sharam IV possessed. The imperial chores carried out by Count Fenring included that of imperial agent on Arrakis during the Harkonnen regime there, and later Ciridar Absentia of Caladan. He joined Shaddam IV in retirement on Solusa Secundus, so it doesn't tell us too much about him there. And of course, Chalmarchy, murky or musky in some dialects, poison administered in the drink. So it sounds like he's either he helped bump off the previous emperor or helped Shaddam IV in some way. He's an agent, isn't he? And he's what's the word? He's an actor not in the on stage sense, if you know what I mean. And he is, yes, I'm not wanting to say too much, but he is indeed a failed Kwisatz Haderach because he's a genetic mule. And possibly in that sense a response to the mule as well from Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. There's a lot to him. And this is I keep saying this, guys. Over the years, just having looked at this stuff, the minor characters in Dune are of immense importance. They're really important, and this is another one. And it's all about deception. I think I've said this, that Herbert's kind of going, look at this, look at this, look at this, and this is the thing that comes in. It's the thing you don't notice, the random, and sometimes the secretive, and there is something about Casimir Fenring that's fascinating, and his wife, I think, is quite kick-ass in a sense, if you know what I mean. His wife, they do make, I think they make a great couple. Sorry to go on about that, but he I'm trying to put my finger on it, guys, and it's just a personal thing, you know. I suppose we all have a different feel of how a character should look or seem in our imaginations. It's sadly sometimes when TV and film gets to it that it gives us a permanent sense of that character. But so an artist's work can do that as well, you know. Let me just catch up with so Babs was saying Casimir Fenring reminded me of Grima Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings. College and Campbell's Brad with Harkonnen, I include that house's civil service, etc. So they say, as will be mentioned in passing at the end of the book, Count Fenring is an almost Kwisatz Haderach. And yes, indeed, failed Kwisatz Haderach. Babs, something nice, great minds think alike. And yeah, it's there's other stuff to do with Kwisatz Haderachs. There are other Kwisatz Haderachs apart from Paul, and we'll get a mention of them when we hit Dune Messiah as well. Yeah, I think he's really interesting. Again, it's the mysteries of Dune that are fascinating, I think. I really should, colleges and councils, I really should bring a flask of coffee with me to these things, yeah. I'm going to have to do an episode on coffee and science fiction one day, because I've got a whole list of stuff to do with really improbable things and science fiction characters with a mug of coffee, and Paul Atreides included. Brad saying, maybe this is why I'm thinking about Sir Humphrey, obsequious sycophant. Yeah, he would be very much that type of we're talking about a character from Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, the British TV show, which is very good. I mean, that's a Machiavellian. That's all about Machiavellian politics, isn't it? It's the backstabbing of you know the what is it they call it, the deep state, if you like, the civil service in Britain, you know. But it's exceptionally funny. There was a really cringeworthy bit, I think. I don't know if you ever saw it, Brad, where Margaret Thatcher tried to get in on it, and I think they seriously did something with her where I think she'd written bits of it or something. She wanted to get the actors involved in a Yes Prime Minister with Maggie Thatcher. It was on the telly I'm sure you'll find a clip of it on YouTube or something. But I thought he was a great field Kwisatz Haderach actually. Obsix skiff psychopath. Obvious psychopath. Great description of Fenric. Thanks, Babs, says Brad. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to have a look at him whenever I think the interactions with Fenring, really we get to see him most. I think it's with the Baron later, isn't it? But he's certainly a threatening, highly, very dangerous individual, and I think he's one of those people that you should take one look at him and think that's not a threat, whatever that is. You know what I mean? Who's that wee guy? That kind of thing, and it's yeah. I think everything that anybody ever gets wrong with Casimir is that they underestimate him. It's a beautiful show. Loved it as a kid. Yes, man. Yeah, it's great. I must watch it again sometime. They don't they're always funny. Those shows, they're just so sharp. Oh, better open the book again then. But yeah, that was just having a wee quick nosy about Casimir. And of course, they do come across as mysterious. We also find out he's not on the Baron. We're going to find out the real story, the real message in a minute or two. And of course, what we do know is that he's not in the employ of the Harkonnens, which and there's a reason why his information is limited. So he's not taking bribes from the Harkonnens, and in that sense, I suppose, as much as there's the Bene Gesserit thing here with Margot and Jessica, it adds to a level of trust in whether this room is safe, I suppose. Now, while we're on Fenrir, guys, I just thought I'd discuss it. Sorry, I've got stuff here, and I've asked a few questions, so let me know what you think. Put Fenrir the Field Kwisatz Haderach. This is just what we've been discussing. I've done a whole page here. And I've put this. I've wondered, is Fenring a Bene Gesserit Bashar stroke spy? That's kind of what I was wondering. And I've thought about the connotations between Fenrir the wolf, and just to say that the name Casimir is like Casimir. So here's some stuff that I got on this field. I've also put down Field Kwisatz Haderach, a genetic mule. Casimir, from the English and French Latin form of the Polish name Kazimierz, which from the word Kazakh, which means proclaimer, and mir, which means peace. So Casimir, Hazimir, in that sense, if we're just taking it a little bit off, proclaimer of peace. Now, if you like, I've found a few guys that have aspects of this character, but I think one of them is actually, two of them are counts. So just if you want to check this out, I just thought this would be a bit of fun. I think there's more to do with one of them, actually. So we have Casimir III, Casimir the Great, King of Poland, who's from 1310 to 1370, only had daughters. But there's another count, Casimir Felix Badeni. His dates are 1846 to 1909. He was a minister president, I think something to do with the Ottoman Empire. And we have another chap called Casimir the Comte de Montron, whose dates are 1768 to 1843. I was just having a wee nosy through people on Wikipedia, and there was just different wee aspects of each of those men that I thought, there's something, and I'm maybe overreading it, but certainly I thought there was something of a couple of them in the character. The fact that Count Casimir, he's a count and that name, and of course the association with Fenrir, being one of the children of Loki. Fenrir's mum's, I think, the god, the giantess Angrboda, is it that her name? Excuse me. Now, Fenrir in Nordic mythology is foretold to kill kill the god Odin during Ragnarok. In turn, the wolf will be slain by Odin's son, Vidar, depending on how you pronounce it. And also, just in terms of agency with hand, I made a wee note. There's all sorts to do with Fenrir. Whenever Fenrir was roped, he managed to bite off the right hand of Tyr. Of course, we have that right hand. The right hand is a constant symbol of imagery constant symbol of imagery. What am I saying? Is a constant symbol of agency and power. Sorry. In the Dune novels, and of course, remember that it's one of the shadows on the moon, and the whole, this the hand thing is very much associated with Paul, even a bit to do with Jessica as well here. So we the last wee bit I just that was just a few wee things, that there is a massive mythological connection between Fenrir, and again it's a kind of an apocalyptic connection, isn't it? The wolf, yeah, Ragnarok is another one of these events, like the I suppose, what do they call it? Armageddon, and that's not really what Armageddon is. Ragnarok, and all these kind of Kralazek, all these end of the world type things. So there is an association there, and as Babs was pointing out, child of Loki, creature of mischief, and a wolf. And for all of those who don't know, is something I'm very fond of saying: child of a wolf is still a wolf. There you go. Did nobody get my wee cold coffee quotation from earlier? No, I just wondered. It was Sir Richard Francis, or not Sir Richard Francis Burton. Sorry, other one. It was Richard Burton in Where Eagles Dare. That's who complains about the cold coffee. Brad saying, I've got to go to an elderly friend's house and do some work for him. I'll be listening, but I got to hit the frog and toad now. Take care, good people. Thanks very much, Brad. Take it easy, sir. Look after yourself. And we'll keep chatting. You keep listening. Oh, dear. So, yeah, the last wee sort of thing I left there, just going back a couple of pages, was about we find this message, the real message, and it's concealed by an overhanging leaf, something natural concealing the artificial, if you like. And I've how its designs have been on the pad as well with that, and I was actually made a wee note just as how it isn't entirely blind. Phew. And of course, how it will have read this message, this obvious message, which is coded. Pardon me. So on that path lies danger. Let's see, am I jumping ahead? I am. So the hidden message demands attention. Margot Fenring is a Bene Gesserit and therefore an ally. And of course, we had this little thing about Jessica's bitterness. And again, it gives us a bit more sympathy for the Count married his lady, and he's the right-hand man of the Emperor, and Leto hasn't married me. And it makes you feel, again, a little bit sympathy for her. But we have this code phrase, on that path lies danger. And this is a little Bene Gesserit thing that we're told here. Every Bene Gesserit is required to give. So it's a message, a phrase, basically, it's a duty that every Bene Gesserit is required to give unless they are being bound by a particular Bene Gesserit school injunction. So in other words, if a Bene Gesserit is in danger, it is the duty of another Bene Gesserit to warn that sister, providing it's not, that it's not affecting some great secret or necessity, that kind of thing. Excuse me. So, hang on a wee second. I'm just going to close this door over. There we go. Right. There we are. Now, so we have another message, and it's hidden. And I think this, again, it's interesting. It's on the leaf, isn't it? Jessica searches with a sense of urgency. The framing of the pad indicated a leaf puts the pad back. The pad's been put back. Howard's looked at it, put it back, and then thinks the thing that's covering it, it's the leaf. Seems there are subtle coded dots on the edge and stem. How it's been over the room, I pointed it, but he's moved the pad, but he has not found the Bene Gesserit message. And I'll just put another wee advert for Thufir Howit's security. Simply put, I suppose, this tells us that Thufir Howit's security is no good against the Bene Gesserit. In fact, we've seen a Bene Gesserit, Reverend Mother walk right through it pretty much and present a poison needle right at Paul's neck. So it's just, I think it's a free, but anytime Thufir Howit's security is mentioned, it should strike fear into the people who he's protecting. I think it's just being silly, but it's Okay, and of course we're going to get to that, aren't we? It's part of the vile Harkonnen's plan to undermine Hoofer, etc., etc. So here we get Margot Fenring's real message, cutting through the key points of it. It's quite lengthy. Your son and Duke are in immediate danger. There's a bedroom designed to attract Paul. We already know this. The Harkonnen have left it full of obvious traps that will be found, so that one trap will escape detection. And at this point, Jessica represses the urge to run to Paul, but she focuses on the full message. In relation to Paul, they don't know the exact nature of the menace, but it's got something to do with the bed. In relation to Leto, they don't know what the threat is to Leto, but they're sure that it's to do with the defection of a trusted companion or lieutenant. In relation to Jessica, the Harkonnens plan to give you as a gift to a minion. The conservatory you're in is safe and cannot, well, at least to the best of my abilities, cannot tell you more. Please forgive me. My count is not in the pay of the Harkonnens, and it's written in haste, Margot Fenring. So I'm just paraphrasing the key points of that message there. And yeah, okay, again, this is a lot more information and intrigue, surprise, and the help of outside agency, I suppose, if you like. That here's somebody willing to give a bit of a hand here, this Margot Fenring. And we haven't really learned anything particularly new, have we? The threat is a defection, trusted companion, lieutenant. All of this we know at this point. And I suppose, as I said, from our point of view, we've had Paul and Jessica go through a perilous situation. Both of them are kind of rewarded in the traditional heroic sense that they get a bit of knowledge here. And although the knowledge is separate, we're already forewarned and have foreknowledge as readers. So it's kind of interesting how this works and how it works for us as the reader. We're in on this. We kind of know what's going on. We don't have all the details either, but we're pretty sure what's going on. And so whenever we get to see the action unravel, that's when we kind of get to fill in the details, if you like. But we will have a sense of what's about to go down here, you know. So the intrigue's building, the suspense building, and this is the same warning that Paul has gotten from the Fremen. The wee bit of fun thing here, I was just making a wee note to myself. Who knows what's going on here? Bene Gesserit intelligence know what's going on. The Fremen know what's going on. The Harkonnens know what's going on. The Emperor, his agents know what's going on. And the only people that don't seem to know what's going on is Howard's security. And oh dear, it is. It just piles insult onto injury, I think, here, really, for Howard's security. And it's going to have it has an end result, I think, you know. So we get this point where Jessica immediately wanting to rush to Paul, and it's a bit like Paul wishing Dr. Yu would just come in through the room previously. She goes to seek Paul, but he comes in, and as I said, I've made a wee note, it imitates the previous chapter with Paul and Mapes. Whereas Paul, as much as he wants to shout for you, suddenly the door comes in. Jessica, as much as she wants to rush to Paul, suddenly the door opens and in comes Paul. And he comes straight over. He's very businesslike again, and he still has the Hunter-Seeker in his clenched fist. And we get this little engagement between him and Jessica. Paul, you know, staring at the hand. Get it in the water and basically immerse it in water, she commanded, and he puts it in there, and then he eventually withdraws his hand. Leave it in the water, withdraw your hand. He withdraws his hand, shakes water from it. And again, we have this kind of water metal leaf thing, I suppose, which is kind of interesting. How metal's been used in this chapter. Here's this metal thing, and in particular, water as a final end to it, if you like. It's quite an interesting little thing. I put a wee note. It's almost like a baptism. Paul puts his hand in, lets the thing go, takes his hand out, and he shakes a little bit of water off it. And I also thought what was really interesting here. So I made a wee note. Is Paul's very casual. It's almost like a baptism in this fountain in this room, and we get a little bit of orders from Jessica, but he obeys, or this kind of thing. They're on the same page, these two, at this point, I think. Although they're little individualities for them. And then what I thought was quite nice is that Jessica breaks off a bit of a plant to poke the hunter seeker. It's dead, and drops the stem into the water. And I've just made a note. So was the plant that she just killed to poke this thing with. But again, there's something man-made, something natural, something green, the water. And we were talking a wee bit earlier about Lord of the Rings. I've just put down, water puts a final end to the hunter-seeker. See Tolkien. Let's see. Did you just catch up? Oh, there's Joseph Smith saying late but not forgotten. Hi, Joseph. Thanks for joining us. So, yeah, water is water rituals, etc. Water is a force of good, a cleansing force within Dune is quite important, and it's also important in Lord of the Rings, in particular. If you see it, the water is used. I suppose it's the flooding of Isengard, isn't it? To break the dam and cleanse. And again, whenever the Nazgul are attacking Frodo at the ford of Bruin, I think is it called. You remember the very famous scene in Lord of the Rings of the white horses in the river coming down to destroy the Nazgul. Again, the water has a cleansing effect. And I suppose the other book that really goes hand in hand, the Dune, Lord of the Rings, the campus favorites from the 60s, I suppose. The other one is Strange in a Strange Land, and it also has water rituals, etc., etc. Joseph said, howdy, glad to be here. Glad to have you, Joseph. So, yeah, in terms of water is quite an important thing, and almost in a religious way, I suppose, obviously in this book. But the three books that kind of represent the 60s counterculture in that sense, the things that were popular on the campuses in America and Britain in the 60s, Lord of the Rings, Dune, and Stranger in a Strange Land. Stranger's the first of those in terms of publication. Lord of the Rings is a funny publication history in America, but you have different dates. But my understanding is it's published as a whole, as a collective, as a trilogy in 1965, and Dune is 63 in magazine format in 1965 as well. And there's three great books, by the way. I think having read the three of them in a row, you get a heavy dose of counterculture in the 60s, fantasy and science fiction. They work really well together, I think, I have to say. So, yeah, and I just thought it was a little bit of a, when we're talking about water and these plants in this room, etc., why did she break off the stem of the plant? Oh, and actually, I've just had a thought about that. I wonder, is it the stem that carries the message? Is she destroying the message? Brad Rose, does the water equal the box with the hymn? Does the water equal the box with the hymn? Not quite sure what you mean, Brad. It's just lost the meaning there with that. Does the water equal the box with the hymn? It's that the last wee bit. I've just confused me a wee bit. If you want to, could you retype it for us, please? I'll have a go at that. Does the water equal the Gom Jabbar box? Do you mean with Paul Atreides here? Trying to have a wee think in terms of what has the Gom Jabbar. Not too sure, to be honest. The box for him. The water. See, I think the water equates to something cleansing. I get it. See what you mean. As in the same sort of put your hand into the box, put your hand into the water, immersion. I get it, Brad. It's like a baptism of fire. I suppose that the box in that sense is a trial, is a baptism of fire. Then I suppose, you could. I suppose this is the end to that. But I think, cleansing. I think it's a relief. The thing is dead and it's done. And as I said, it's dead. And it's something that's not actually alive. If you see what I mean, but the plant is dead there. And I thought it was why the plant, you know, why not poke it with your crisp knife that you're clearly carrying because we've been told so. I just thought, the preciousness of these plants, the fact that they equate to 1,000 people, and she just breaks one off. And I thought that there's got to be there's some hidden what's the meaning there? I don't know, but I'm sure there is some kind of meaning. Yeah, and sometimes we don't always figure these things out. We have to kind of wonder what's the author up to. Is there subtext here? Am I just reading too much into it? But as I said, Dune's one of those books where you'll not get punished by wandering, if you know what I mean. But Paul does a lot of wandering at the start of the book himself, and it's kind of it's part of how Herbert works. It's how he wants us to get us thinking about this, but the things that we don't know. And the problem is we do know. It's kind of we're half informed or misinformed, if you see what I mean. We don't have the full picture, and it's that desire within the reader to get that full picture, I suppose. But there's plenty to speculate on, and it doesn't always work out. I think for Frank or for us, I suppose. But I just thought it was a little bit. Why did she do that? And is it just in the moment? Is it the moment of the danger? And especially when we consider how much a considered character Jessica is, in more ways than one, I suppose. And of course, yeah. So let me just check where we're at. Sorry. Paul scans the room using the Bene Gesserit way. This room could conceal anything. And he's absolutely right. It's kind of presented a bit like Jessica peering through the leaves and so on in that kind of funny way, I suppose. But Jessica tells me there's reason to believe it's safe. And I've made a note here that this is because of Margot, not Howard. And of course, we get this little retort from Paul. Howard said my room is supposed to be safe. And this is I've just put a wee mark here. Paul Atreides at this point is not a happy bunny about his personal security. And would you be as well, So, and how does he put it? This place could conceal anything, he said. I have reason to believe it's safe, she said. My room is supposed to be safe too, Howard said. And we get this, it was a hunter-seeker, she reminded him. And I think here, Paul's pretty much about to put down Howard professionally, and Jessica decides, I think, intercedes here to give him the benefit of the doubt to Howard. It's a hunter-seeker. Someone's inside, has to operate it. Ergo, they could have been brought in after Howard has checked the place. Now, that's an excuse, and what I've written down is that if that's the case, Howard's security is static and therefore worthless. It's not dynamic. It doesn't check things on a regular basis. To check something on one day and then assume that nothing has changed is stupid. So I've just put it's static. And there we go. It's as simple as that. And we get a little bit more about hunter-seeker knowledge and that the control beams have a limited range, etc. And here we go. We start to go into the seeds of the suspicion here. We get a little bit of Jessica's thoughts. She thought of the message on the leaf. Defection of a trusted companion or lieutenant. Not Howard, surely. Oh, surely not Howard. Couldn't be him. And again, this level of trust that what's going on here. The intrigues building, the dangers building, and now can we, they're being. We already know this, as I said, but it's a question of how much I don't know how much can they keep falling, if you know what I mean. As part of us kind of wants to shout out and warn these two characters, don't we? Come on, Jessica, it's Howard. Surely you can see that, and you want to warn them, I suppose, and so your sense of danger grows for these characters. And they are the good guys. These are our protagonists, if you know what I mean. These are our heroes. And they both had to deal with a fair bit of nonsense so far. And again, as I said, Paul's update of events, how its men are searching. The hunter, and he tells Jessica, he updates Jessica, he tells her that the thing almost got Mapes. And this prompts Jessica to remind Paul of that he's been summoned by his father. And I like this again. There's again what's been set up before is kind of paying off for us here. Excuse me. And what I mean by that is that Paul often has to wait for his father, and often has to wait for him not to show up. And this is a bit of it back at, I think, flip back. They can wait, says Paul. And that's, in other words, my own father can wait. This is more important. So Leto can wait, and I just thought that's interesting. And it shows Paul's got a sense of urgency about him, a sense of caution as always. That his ducal training has kicked in, that his sense of danger is active, and that to a degree he's taking control here. And I thought, really importantly, because much as we've talked about Paul being a typical teenager at certain points and how he behaves, I've just put a big, massive Paul's not a teenager here. There's something of he's businesslike, he's grown up about this, and we get to see a little bit about Paul, his attitudes in terms of trust and his sense of security at this point. So he immediately asks her, "How do you know the room is safe?" And that's he's not trusting here at all. So Jessica explains to him, and I'll just put a little bit because we'll see this repeated here, that there's no repeat of exposition. She just in the text we're told she updates him, she explains it, and Paul relaxes slightly. Now that's juxtaposed, I think, with her not relaxing. And we're told here, and I think this is an interesting one, it took all of her training to prevent a fit of hysterical trembling. I don't know what to think about that one. And I suppose it's maybe in terms of the threat of what's come to Paul, that as a mother, that this could, just send her a little bit over the edge to a point of where she'd lose control to hysterical trembling. And that word hysteria, I suppose, is an interesting one. If you, particularly from a female point of view, I think, and it has all sorts of odd associations with medicine. It's very much a male word, I think, used to describe women. And let's just have a wee all sorts of things. So I think it's a particularly just being described as a pejorative term here. I'm just having a quick look on Wikipedia, but I'm wanting the disambiguation. Where are we? Bear with me a wee second. Just want to have a nosy. Yeah, isn't this the book, the 1895 book Studies on Hysteria? I think is the thing that I'm talking about. There's but I was looking for the mythological connection. I'm not finding it. Oh, sorry, I'll look into that some other time. It's one of those terms, I suppose, that it's the Greek word for uterus. There you go, is hystera. That's what I was after. Sorry, folks. Let me write that down. Hystera. It's the Greek word for uterus. So the word hysterical has a lot of negative connotations and it's a very male-focused thing against women. Worth having a look at, by the way. Just historically, this kind of stuff. But there you go, from the word hystera for uterus. This is Frank's word here, by the way. This is our narrator, and I think it's the wrong word entirely. Hysterical trembling. That there is indicative of a male writer. It's as simple as that. And Frank's giving himself away there. Now, it's not I'm saying that he's a misogynist or anything like that. There's certain things that you can do whenever you analyze books and things like that. It's a fun thing to do. That if you don't know who's written something, to figure out if they're male or female, or uh, I suppose other these days. There's certain cues and words that people use depending on their gender orientation. Hysteria is generally a one used by men, I think. Um, hmm. I'll give you a good example. Men won't often call other men handsome. That's a good word. If you see, if you're given a couple of books and you're asked to identify the gender of a person, and I suppose this is maybe, I don't even maybe know if it's a considered thing anymore with the nature of gender these days. But I often personally found that gender was sorry, handsome is a term not used by men to describe other men, for example. So if you heard of a man being described as handsome, I would argue that in the past maybe that this had been a female writer, if you see what I mean. I think the word hysteria has enough negative connotations to female writers for them to be particular about how they would use it. I think, but it's not right. The word is not right here, and it's just me being a pedant, I think. So it took all of her training to stop her from breaking down into this trembling at this point. And as we go, so I think the word hysterical, there's a bad word, bad use of a word by the author. Paul spoke matter of factly. It's the Harkonnens, of course. We shall have to destroy them. And I've just made a wee note here that this is Paul being very matter of fact. It is the Harkonnens, of course, how obvious. We shall have to destroy them. And I just put that there is, up until this point, I suppose, does Paul have any real personal reason to hate the Harkonnens? The answer is probably not. But this is a generational hatred, and it's a familial hatred that's been taught to him. So in terms of nature versus nurture, Paul has been nurtured to hate Harkonnens. And if we think about our familial spirals of violence within the Pelopids, etc., and all of this kind of thing, I would be extremely bothered by if my son talked so casually about exterminating people or wiping them out or destroying them. It's kind of more for me to do, isn't it? But it's one of those hyperbolic things. In this case, it's not. We're talking about Paul being a teenager. You know, you'd almost expect that kind of response from a teenager. Oh, we'll kill them all, we'll destroy them. But he's calm here. He's a matter of fact, and he means this. It's not a thing said in anger or, oh, we'll have to kill them all. Look what they've done. It's, yeah, we must destroy them. It's business, I think, isn't it? That's what I think makes Paul particularly scary here. And as much as it's a matter of factly, if I was his mother, I would be concerned by that kind of comment, I suppose. And we get another rapping sound at the door, which interrupts. It's a code knock this time. And then comes a chap in an Atreides uniform with a Howat insignia on his cap. So Howat's men have their own little, I don't know, H or something upon their caps. And this guy comes in, Howat's security here, and he checks the room and he informs them of a few things. Excuse me. And he tells them that they found a cairn in the cellar. They've caught a man in it, and that this is the hunter-seeker operator. Now, because I used to live in a place called Cairn Hill. Just for those who don't know, there we go. A cairn is a man-made pile of stones. Funeral cairns, etc., this kind of thing. They're used for all sorts of things, but they're all over the place. If you want to CAIR and have a wee look at them, you get them all over the place here in Ireland. Last time I saw a really good one was, tell you what, let's have a look. Let's see, there's Sheen's grave on Wikipedia. It is not. Goodness knows why. Oh. You can probably find a wee, if you want to do a search on Wikipedia and look up for Oisin's grave, and I'll spell Oisin for you. There you go. There you go. It's in Northern Ireland along the Glens of Antrim, and you should be able to get a picture of it somewhere on the web. Looks like a miniature Stonehenge, and it has a kind of a cairn at it as well. If you want to have a wee look at one, a proper one. So this guy's kind of built himself into a pile of stones and bricked himself up, if you like. And it does have a funerary association as well. And so this guy's buried himself in this for a month. We're going to find out. And of course, Jessica wants to take part in this person's interrogation. But we get an admission from Thufir Howitt's security, and the admission is we messed up, and he's dead. Once again, and dear oh dear, it's not, it doesn't look too good for Howitt. And this guy's kind of interesting, actually. Howitt's man here. We get a bit of discussion about this individual. Is there anything to identify him? Nothing to identify him. Sorry. Paul asks, "Do you think this chap was an Arrakis native?" Jessica identifying that this is quite an astute question. So we come to this conclusion that this chap was put in there a month ago. He has the native look, the man said, but that's not an affirmation. Put into that cairn more than a month ago by the look, and left there to await our coming. Stone and mortar where he came through into the cellar were untouched when we inspected the place yesterday. I'll stake my reputation on it. And of course, Jessica, we get one of these little political moments here, bit of politicking from the no one's questioning your reputation. No one's questioning your thoroughness. Well, that's not what he said. He said I'd stake my reputation on it. But she says no one's questioning your thoroughness. And of course, we know they weren't thorough. We get this back from this one of Thufir's men. And he says, I think this is quite interesting. I question it, my lady. We should have used sonic probes. So here we've got effectively a henchman of the Atreides, a henchman of Howitt, coming in and saying, yeah, I messed up. We messed up. Shouldn't have happened. We should have done this. And of course, we get this little thing from Paul. I presume that's what you're doing now. And of course, I've written here he's hoping that that's what you're doing. And of course, that in that sense is Paul saying to him, have you learned from your mistake? What have you done differently? And of course, yes, sir, he says. And I just put, this guy's reputation is worthless to me. I stake my reputation on it. You already have. Your reputation is now kaput, I think. Paul gives the orders, takes command. Tell Leto will be delayed. And how it says orders have been given for Paul to be guarded in a place. And again, this chap runs his eye over the room. What about this place? And okay, Jessica says Howitt and I have inspected it. So we get these guards mounted outside, basically. And I always get the think that Paul trusts this more that Jessica's inspected. It's not really that Howitt's inspection has left any sense of safety there. So the chap, off he goes. He bows and touches his cap to Paul as he leaves. And I just put that this chap, regardless of I suppose the dramatic irony and all of this here, he seems quite efficient. And he's this chap learns, this one of Howitt's men, and he holds himself accountable for his actions. And that's what I got out of Howitt's man. Efficient, makes mistakes, but learns from them, holds himself accountable. And that's pretty good, I have to say. But it doesn't. And I suppose that's not kind of the thing you'll get with the Harkonnens and so on. Off within these books, you get anybody who ever makes a mistake ever often is, killed by the bad guy. It's a kind of a trait of villains, isn't it? That nobody ever gets to learn from their mistakes. Let's see. I'll catch up with some of your comments here, folks. Give me a wee minute. Tell you what, give me a quick second to blow my nose. Sorry, that's much better. Oh, pop. Goodness gracious. Let's see, Gone at the Start does what? Oh, the branch with the message for sure. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Why otherwise? Why do that? I thought it was very hmm, not good. Also, to clarify, spirited suggests that nothing less than could get past Howard, but we see now the operator has been there for a month. Very, very non-spirited. Yeah. Kevin Duncan, I'm assuming, vom today. Colleges and Campbells, we should expect Paul to be cold-blooded in deciding to take out another house. He has been raised in an actively perilous political context discussed earlier in this book. I totally agree. This is the reality of the world that Paul lives in. But we can again we still have to comment about it from our own point of view, I suppose, from our world. I think I totally agree with what you're saying there, colleges, but always behind the context of this is that this hero is being imprinted upon us by the author, and we should always be aware of that. I think and as much as that, if we do think oh, he's hard done by, poor Paul Atreides, and all of this kind of stuff, there are enough moments where you should go, So yes, he's cold blooded in that sense. Here, he's ready to wipe out a house. If we ask ourselves, what does that mean? Does wiping out a house equate to wiping out a planet? And if so, and I think maybe tell me what you think about this, guys. If that's the case, almost every group within the Dune universe represents a divergent form of human evolution. So if you wipe out a house, in that sense, are you committing genocide? If you see what I mean. You have to assume that each planet that the various human groups live on has affected their evolution, whether it be its sunlight, its gravity, etc., etc. All of these things would have an effect certainly over thousands and thousands of years. So I often just as much as we see planets, we don't see the little people. We see houses and planets. If it does taking out the hard cone, mean wiping out GD Prime, or is it just cut off the heads of the family, really? But it certainly suggests that it's all the little people that die for the, as usual. That's the way these things work, you see. Rockadoodle noodle. That's my doggy woggy barking away out there. Oh, she's all right, love. Oh, I think they're coming in. Hello, Haldol. Ah, the ladies have arrived at the doghouse. How you doing, girls? I think Noodles wants out. There we go. Excuse me. Yeah. I do think that we just very mentioned. I thought that Howit's man, I think, is maybe a bit of a. I don't know. Should we feel sorry for Howit's security, and maybe it's just Howit, But yeah. I don't think we should analyze fiction critically. Fiction might speak to human nature, but it is narcissistic for us to think that the author has our morality in mind. If we don't do that, colleges, I'm kaput. Basically, if I can't look at something critically, it depends on what you mean to look at fiction critically, I suppose. And often to criticize something, I've talked about this. Criticism has almost come to be synonymous with putting something down, to having a go at it, to finding what you personally don't like about it because it doesn't fit in with your worldview, that kind of thing. And I think we really are there. Fiction might speak to human nature, but it's narcissistic for us to think the author had our morality in mind. I suppose it would be, but it's the fact that we've got a statement from him telling us. That's the thing there. And so when an author does deceive his readers and has an intent to do so, it's right to ask why, I think. And if we don't look at fiction critically, fiction fiction conveys more ideas into human society, probably argue than factual books. But so they're ideas, but yeah, there's a lot of bad ideas in fiction too. We need to be critical of those. But I think it's about balance, to be honest, and to criticize I don't know. I look at it as a balanced thing. And you've probably got that from me that I won't put anything really down without looking at. I've talked about various books in here and said that this isn't a great book about this, but, and I'm genuine about those buts. If you know what I mean, we're talking about Lord Raglan's book the other day, The Hero, and just really in terms of, if you, I suppose if you read the book and assume it's all true, then you're in trouble. But it's a really good book, and as much as I would say, don't learn your mythology from Lord Raglan, but you should include him, and understand, if you know what I mean, understand what he got wrong. But I think his ideas are fascinating, and they've probably knocked other people onto further ideas. If you see what I mean, critically, isn't the popular modern liberal arts sense. This is looking for the problems beneath the text. Yeah, I don't really do that. I think the book's a thing of its time, and I know there's an awful lot of that at the minute. That, it's not woke, it's not this, it's not that, it's not representative. It's, and speaking of fiction, yeah, I think it exists in a lot of things as well, but the fiction's made up, and to have a look at it, I suppose it does have an enormous impact on us, I think. But it depends. We can take that argument all the way back to the Greek theatre and stuff. That what's the point in writing stories and books and plays and poems and etc.? Is it just to entertain you? And I suppose that there's a fundamental question that no, it should be there should be some kind of educational element to almost all these stories, and there often is. But it's a question of them becoming, what are you being taught, and is it correct or not? So I think there is a responsibility for human beings to be critical in that sense of all things, you know. But it's easy. Yeah, depends on how you look at it, I suppose. But that's what we're doing now. We're analysing it critically, but we're not putting it down and we're not slamming it. The one thing that I've gone critical with, if you like, in terms of I think it as a negative thing, but it's like one word in the book. We are just talking about the Jessica about to hysterically tremble, and I didn't think that was the right word there, but it's Frank's word, not mine. But it also depends on how you read it, because everybody reads a book differently, and that's kind of why I packed in the whole lecturing and computing and stuff like that. I'm bored senseless. Bored senseless by computers. It's the same stuff all the time. What else are you going to teach that? That's how you do it. Where you go. But with literature here, I mean, you can see this from the room. We've all got different opinions on books. We all read things differently. We all have a different set of nature and nurture behind us, and I think it's a good thing. But it's often not done particularly well. I'm not a fan of academic criticism. It's a very bitchy place, and it's a very backstabbing place, if you know what I mean. As are academies in general, Yes, theatre speaks to human nature, but nobody truly literate wants to watch or read a preachy moralist text. I agree, and I wouldn't necessarily preachy and moralist texts are pretty much that, I suppose. And I don't think Dune's doing that, but that's the point. Herbert wants to he really does want to teach and educate you, but he doesn't want to be preachy. I think that again, he's used that word himself, and so it's about the mysteries in the book. What do they show us? What's the real? Is there any real knowledge here? Or is this just a magical desert planet, and all this is absolutely made up? And if that's the case, then why is it being sold to us as science fiction? It should just be a fantasy, shouldn't it? Just some story. But yeah, I think there is a lot of criticism that's kind of ridiculous. And some subjects actually are much worse for it than others. I'm going outside of literature into things like the psychology world. I think that there's all sorts there. But there's an awful lot. Bias is the big problem, colleges. That's what I often say. Yeah. Bias within criticism is what I meant to say just there. But you're just saying, this is my point. We should not judge Paul for taking the moves open to him. I agree. And the real problem here, the real problem here at colleges is well, I have a certain level of morality to me. The real problem for some of us here is that we understand the book and we've read it, and so we have hindsight and understanding of Paul. For someone who's coming at the book new, this is this entire scene wouldn't even be in the film, would it? This room's absent from the film. But if you're coming at this new, I actually, the point I was making is that the little things that warn you that Paul isn't a really nice guy are all very subtle. They're just went by us. There was one of them, and you're absolutely right. We shouldn't judge him, and we're not going to, because we feel he's justified. We shouldn't judge him, and it's the world he lives in and the situations that he reacts to. How would we react? But I suppose it's the journey of the hero, and whenever he gets to a certain point, it's then those decisions and his mistakes that become amplified. But that's the point where we really need to run a critical eye over Dune. I think Paul has not read his book, not yet. Now, there's a possibility that the author of Dune is Paul Atreides. All of it. What do you think about that? Who's the third person omniscient narrator? Because he's contained inside Skytail's null entropy tube. So who knows who wrote you? I totally agree with you. Just having a bit of fun, colleges. But yeah, the mystery of the omniscient narrator, wouldn't it be funny if it was Paul telling his own story? Propaganda. After all, the Atreides do propaganda better than nobody. Not yet prescient. But the book itself is an artifact from the future, isn't it? We're looking back on these events. It's all happened. And it gives us different sources, I think, as well, different interpretations of what's going on. But yeah, it's a good point, colleges. Aye. Let's see, where did we get to? We had security in and out. No one questions the thoroughness. Sonic probes. Blah blah blah. Where were we? So the guard had touched his cap to Paul. Off he went. Seemed quite efficient. I think we were just saying we took a wee bit of a chance to chat about that there. So we get the guard mounted until we've been over the house once more. Off he goes, and basically we get Paul and Jessica still in this room. Paul breaks the sudden silence, and we really get it here. Had we better go over the house later ourselves? Your eyes might see things others would miss. And Jessica says, this wing was the only place I hadn't examined. She said, I put it off last because, pardon me, of course the thoughts completed for because Howard gave it his personal attention, he said. She darted a quick look at his face, questioning. Do you distrust Howard? She asked. No, but he's getting old. He's overworked. We could take some of the load off of him. So this is it. It's all about Howard at the minute. And this idea, we have a very interesting thing coming right here. That would only shame him. This is Jessica. That would only shame him and impair his efficiency, she said. A stray insect won't be able to wander into this wing after he hears about this. He'll be shamed that ... And her, yeah. She can almost hear how, if you know what I mean. Paul, very matter of fact, says, we must take our own measures. Now, simply put, Jessica's point of view here, I just thought I'd point this out, that there's a couple of different ways that we can look at it, but it's either a circular argument, a paradox, or a positive feedback loop. Take your pick. But basically saying that Howard's mistakes will shame him. That shame will impair his efficiency. And because of what's happened, not even an insect could get in here because he's so ashamed that he'll... So the bottom line is that Jessica stops here, realizing this is circular thinking. It'll keep iterating. Howard's shame, and if Howard, I've put this, His efficiency is impaired if he has any kind of self-awareness whatsoever. And this is, I think this is hilarious, that mighty mentats can be brought down by a little bit of emotional instability. If you want to really mess with the mentats, day, just go up and go, I really don't think those clothes suit you. Just start poking at them and pick them, and work away at their confidence, and they'll be a wreck. And it doesn't quite make sense. The Harkonnens are aware that emotionally prodding at Hawat will make him inefficient. And so this is all part of our plan. So we must take our own measures. In other words, keep Hawat out of it. And we get this from Jessica, that he has served 3 generations with honor in House Atreides. He deserves every respect, every trust. Excuse me. Now I've put there's a wee bit of irony here, because he's not going to get it, is he? If we listen to what she's actually saying, he deserves every respect and every trust. Well, they're talking about deceiving him here. And if that's deceit here in terms of, his abilities to run security, deceit is not every trust, is it? It's the exact opposite of showing him trust, is deceiving him. And then, of course, every respect. Well, by deceiving him in this way professionally, I'd argue shows him a complete lack of respect. So what Jessica actually says is, I think what they're doing is presents the opposite. And I've just put, well, what is the correct thing to do here? The answer is to be honest with him and give him retirement. Thufir, your judgment is badly impaired. You're old. I'm sorry, old chum. You served our house 3 generations. You're really old. Have some money and go retire and enjoy yourself. Thank you. That's the conversation that needs to be held. I think, why is he even there? They should have just let him, pack up and stay on Arrakis. But he's definitely, I think Thufir himself is an incompetent threat to House Atreides, and we have to kind of wonder why, because he is pretty bang on about certain things later on. In fact, I actually quite like Howat's character once we get going. Once he's been captured, I think he's much more fleshed out and sympathetic. But up until this point, we just presented as, he terrifies even the Emperor. And again, makes you really think that, boy, that was propaganda, wasn't it? This is just not true. And of course, whenever Paul says this, whenever father's bothered by something you've done, he says Bene Gesserit, like the curse word. And this little interaction between Paul and Jessica, well, what is it about me that bothers him? And the response here is another one of those, when you argue with him. So Bene Gesserit, like a curse word. What is it that bothers Leto about Jessica? The fact that she argues with him. And I've just put underneath this, what a twat Leto is. And I'm sorry, the character Leto, I think, is not meant to be sympathetic. He's certainly not sympathetic to me. But I've asked him, what is it about Jessica but in terms of arguing, is it that she shouldn't argue with him because it's her, that she's Jessica, that she shouldn't argue with him because she's a Bene Gesserit, or that she shouldn't argue with him because she's a woman? Which one is it? That's kind of, and I've actually put which one of these is it, or is it all 3? And again, just how women are treated, of course. And I had meant to mention actually earlier, by the way, we've been bringing this up. Not too sure in Margot Fenring's real message. Just a point that the Harkonnens plan to give you as a gift to a minion was again another discussion of Jessica as a piece of property, as a gift, something to be given. And so there's little things here, but yeah, what is it? Why does he not like her to argue? She's a highly intelligent woman, seems to be a lot more smarter than Leto. And the response is, you are not your father, Paul. And I think that's a really important statement. Sins of the father are not, sins of the son are not the sins of the father, this kind of thing. But but he's not Leto. And I think that's really important. And I don't think Paul and Jessica behave to each other in the same way that they do to Leto. I think they're closer in a way. I think it's because of their similarities with some of the things that Paul has been taught, etc. But certainly Jessica comes across as more competent, and Paul, I think, sees that. He says here, "I'll worry her. It'll worry her, but I must tell her about the Mapes and the traitor." And again, Jessica knows her own son is holding back here. That's not like him, she says. And again, he shrugs in a kind of dismissive teenager way and tells Jessica all that he knows. Just like we mentioned before when we were getting this recap, again, there's no sort of exposition here. We already know, it's a wee quick, he told her sort of thing. So at this point, we have Jessica and Paul having a shared knowledge, if you like. Jessica is also holding back what she knows from Margot Fenring's letter. So she basically lets Paul in on it. And essentially, Fremen knowledge has been handed to Paul, if we think about it this way. The Bene Gesserit knowledge has been handed to Jessica. And this, in turn, has become a common store of knowledge for the pair of them. She shows Paul a leaf, tells him the message, etc., etc. So she's not hiding. They both make a decision not to hide things from the other. And it's interesting that they both almost have exactly the same information. There's a traitor. We don't know. It's the same with the Fremen. We don't know exactly who it is, but it's a companion or a lieutenant, etc., a defector. And yeah, I suppose defection is used in this chapter as well. Get a little bit of hint of the Cold War and so on, which is in full rage at this time. And so we get this little run of thoughts. Father must learn of this at once. Paul suggests that they radiograph and code, and so no, wait until you see him alone. And this solicits the question from Paul: do you mean trust no one? And should we trust nobody? Really, is it that bad? And at this point, we're deflected from the answer to this. There's another possibility, says Jessica. And again, this is astute because it's correct. The message may have been meant to get to us, to sow seeds of distrust and suspicion, etc., within our ranks. Excuse me. Of course, she's correct here. Even with the ability Paul has truth sense, various people, I suppose, have the ability to detect truth. But the real problem is if a false message or a misdirecting message is given by someone who believes it to be true. So the people who gave this message might believe it to be true. And therefore, is it to sow distrust and suspicion in our ranks? Now, I suppose at this point, really, they have got the same message from two completely independent and utterly separate sources. Though we would have to assume that Mapes has probably interacted with Margot Fenring at some point when she stayed in this household. So Jessica tells Paul he must tell Leto privately and inform him of this aspect, that this traitor thing could be just a thing to mess with us and make us all suspicious. And of course, it works on two levels, because there is a traitor, but it also it messes with them and makes them suspicious as well. So it's almost as if the Atreides have a bit of a detective work to do here. And again, Paul understands this. He gets it. And once again, we get this framing of scene, if you like. Jessica turned to the tall reach of filter glass, stared out to the southwest where the sun of Arrakis was sinking, a yellow ball low above the cliffs. So the sun's going down as we go along here. And it'll finally set in a moment. And we've, sunset, it gives us that sense of, time, movement, darkness, intrigue, danger approaching, this kind of thing. And here we go. We get a little discussion about the suspicions. So from Paul, do you think it might be Howard? No. What about Yuri? Hmm. Uh, Yuri, we get a response. They're working the problem here, um, and it's based upon what they've been told. So Yuri is not a lieutenant, so no, that's a no. He's not a companion, though we kind of think he is, isn't he? Really, he seems to be a teacher to Paul. And in terms of how his teacher companions before were described, but that's also kind of a he's not a companion. Jessica tells us. So that's a no. In terms of the categories that Yuri fits and what they know, hates the Harkonnens as bitterly as we do. So that's a dismissal for Yuri, or for Yuri. And of course, Paul, running this line of thought again, looks out across at the cliffs. It's not Gurney, and no, he's certain there. It's not Duncan. We get a flat no there. Not a sub lieutenant. Impossible. No. I'm actually wondering why. Why are all your sub lieutenants? Why are they all so unbribable and faithful? We're told that they've been loyal to us for generations and that their loyalty is for good reason. And again, I've written, what is that reason? I'd love to know because, I don't know. I'm not too sure what the Atreides think of what people think of and what's the actual truth, I suppose. But I just thought, yeah, why are all these people loyal to him? Why do you think it's impossible for them to betray you? And they're just described as a whole cadre of sub-lieutenants, if you see what I mean, just a bunch of guys. It's strange. So Jessica's frightened and fatigued. Sorry, fatigued, not frightened at this point. There's so much peril here. It's an incredibly perilous place, as we know. And at this point, we get this little shift. Her tiredness, she rubs her forehead, sensing her own fatigue, looking about, and she looks across the yellow filtered landscape, studying it. And what we're told is we get a little bit of sense of the spice here, the spice manufacturing process, etc., and the geography, if you like, of the area. Beyond the ducal grounds stretched a high-fenced storage yard, lines of spice silos in it with stilt-legged watchtowers, standing around it like so many startled spiders. She could see at least 20 storage yards of silos reaching out to the cliffs of the shield wall. Silos repeated, stuttering across the basin. Slowly, so all of these silos, all of this spice there, heading off across the basin, almost as if from this point of view, taking it down towards the shield wall. And we're told that there's at least 20 of these such storage yards. And as this point, the sun begins to set beneath the horizon, and we're told the stars come out. Sunset on a new world, sunset on Arrakis, and they're looking at it from inside through filtered glass, if you like. And we're told we see one bright star low on the horizon, clear, precise rhythm. And often rhythmic sounds give away things that are man-made, etc. Blink, 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 we're told. Someone is signaling from the shield wall cliffs. More intrigue. More danger building. Jessica tries to read the message, but it's no code that she's ever learned. And one light we discover then one light off to the left is blinking back. And one light off to the left grew brighter, began to wink back at the cliff very fast. Blink, squirt, glimmer, blink, and it was gone. And I think really interesting, described as a false star. This false star in the cliff winked out immediately. And so we've got signals going back and forth between the shield wall and someone off to the left. Often when Frank paints these little scenes for us, he gives us a center, a left, and a right, I think. Left, I think, also tends to represent the danger side of things, that idea of left is sinister, right is Dexter, if you see what I mean. Chapter 11. Let's see. So, the signals fill her with a sense of premonition. And we get questions. Why use lights? And why not use the communications network? The answers of which are obvious to Jessica. Not so much maybe to us, but we're told. Duke Leto will have tapped the comms network. The answer was obvious. The Communinet was certain to be tapped now by agents of the Duke Leto. Light signals could only mean that messages were being sent between his enemies, between Harkonnen agents. And there we go. Lights going back and forth between the enemies. Can't be the Duke. It must be these. Must be can't be the Duke. Must be enemies of the Duke. They're not using the comms network. Why? Because Duke Leto has tapped into it and is monitoring it. Oh, here, Big Holly's having a wee. Excuse me, a wee thing. It's all right, Big Love. You having a wee bad dream? There you go. That's okay. There we go. Sorry about that. Of course, the chapter ends. Sound disrupting things again. Sound disrupts. Rapping at the door, and it's Howittsman again. The voice of Howittsman. All clear, sir, my lady. Time to be getting the young master to his father. And that's our chapter. Of course, that's going to pick up next time. There's loads here, I think. All sorts, but really about it's a very intriguing chapter. Intrigue at the fore. Excuse me. And we're getting our sense of urgency moving along. Where are we at now? We're only about 83 pages into this enormous, quite large book, over nearly 600 pages. So we're doing rightly, doing a couple of chapters a week, I think. And I think there's some really interesting little things here. As I said, Casimir Fenring, fascinating character. And we'll have to take a wee look at him in detail. There's lots of things that we can look at in detail here, isn't there? But he's, you could almost... You want to know about the life and adventures of Casimir Fenring, wouldn't you? He sounds quite interesting. Let's catch up with your comments. Back up a wee bit here, folks. We're having a good wee debate about criticism and fiction. Cynthia says, Paul's last word in the chapter is Yui. Jessica misses signal after signal. Then the irony voiced by the guard that all is clear. Well spotted, Cynthia. Let's have it. Yes. Where are we? Possibly it's Yuri. Yep. Last thing he says. Very well spotted. Of course, we know it's him. And I often wonder, I mean, how do other people take this? I suppose I look at it as it's Herbert building up the tension. We have a certain knowledge. It gives us a level of power, doesn't it? I suppose, and a little bit of powerlessness that we can't do anything to prevent it. What's happening if it's that bad, and why should we? I suppose if we're going to read through the story, as Colleges has said, as much as we can, we shouldn't judge Paul for taking the moves open to him. It's what moves would you take, and etc. etc. And of course, we haven't grown up well. I'd argue colleges and cannibals, this world's not that far fetched or different from mine. Take out all the science fiction stuff, but it's it's a pretty nasty world here, I suppose. But yeah, so actually, to be honest with you, from that point of view, I can judge quite a lot of people by what they've done in certain circumstances, and so no, I'd happily judge them. But it's not, if you see what I mean. But yeah, we shouldn't, and we can't as first-time readers. I think it's a thing that only comes really. It's not a thing I think we're going to do as a first-time reader, and it's because the deception's pretty much so complete. The only thing that really, the first time that I read Dune, and as I said, I saw the film first. The thing that threw me quite badly and I just went ping in my head. Must be 1999 when I read it first time or something like that. 1998. It was the sacrifice of his own child. Leto the second. And that's where I judged him heavily on that point, I have to say. And that's within the first book. And I always went, oh, that's a bit... and I remember, it's actually probably the one thing that led me towards the PhD, actually, was going, oh, that's a bit like Agamemnon, isn't it? And if I said anything to associate anybody with Agamemnon, it would probably not be in a very, very good light, I think. But yeah, I think as Cynthia is saying there, lots of dramatic irony here, and you could almost write a little comedy series, through Howit's Security, something like that. It just seems almost just so bad. And it's the nature of these people's lives, if you think about it, as Colleges and Campbell's is saying, if this is a universe so dangerous, so incredibly dangerous, I personally, if I had the option to leave the Empire, if this is what the Empire is like, I would have left, I think. Saying that, I've often said that I have the option to leave here, and I haven't. But I think it's a great wee chapter, and particularly this room, this conservatory. We're going to get a few more things from it. Yeah, we've had comparisons to people, haven't we? One date palm equals, was it 5 people? One small conservatory here equals 1,000 people, and literally 1,000 lives. If that's the case, this is the life juice, isn't it? As it's pointed out on this one. But there we go. But yeah, I really like these chapters, and it's the very little things. Mapes, I think, the way Mapes interacts with House Atreides right up the start here, I think it's hugely important. I think I keep saying that's important, but what I mean is it really brings a real sense of verisimilitude, life. It brings life to the story. It brings realism. There's something about these characters, Mapes and stuff like that seem grounded in reality, if you like. This wizened old little wrinkly woman, and again seems quite powerful, quite astute. And you have to remember, at a certain point within this household, Mapes seems to know more than most of them. So, and I was always actually kind of a wee bit gutted whenever Mapes gets killed. I always imagined that maybe Mapes would end up being one of the right hand, Fremen warriors of Muad'Dib. To see Mapes in action against the Harkonnen was kind of one of those little pleasures you could imagine, I suppose. Holly dolly. There you go. Well, listen, folks, thank you very much for joining me tonight. That's us through chapter 10. And we're still going strong. And I actually don't know how many chapters are in this, but we'll have to find out. But we'll just keep plodding along. And so I hope you can join me to look at chapter 11 on Sunday at 9 o'clock GMT. And I'm feeling a wee bit better, etc., and all of that. So hopefully we'll be on tomorrow night for our Science Fiction Friday. Got a few things to chat about, actually. Some of them kind of interesting, some new sci-fi and stuff. So hopefully you can join me tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, and I will definitely be there. Particularly throw it aside, etc. Excuse me. So listen, folks, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a great bit of banter again tonight, and we're getting all sorts of wee ideas and stuff like this. I need a few more likes on these videos. We don't get that many likes, colleges. Don't worry about it, but we're not that well known, and I think what we do is a bit much for some people. But I'm very happy just plodding away. So you can always tell your friends to like and subscribe and all that stuff. But I don't. I just keep doing it. And I need to get a few more videos made, actually. So just had a bit of a week here with a few things and bits and pieces. Life getting in the way. But hopefully we'll have our next. We'll have a good wee one tomorrow night. Hopefully for a bit of a chat about science fiction, and we'll get out chapter 11 with the book club on Sunday. And I'm hoping to get a couple more things done. More what we were always about, I suppose, on the station. Hoping to have a video and an audio book for you very soon. I'm just going to say, because I had planned it for this week, but just life gets in the way. And if I can't sit and do these things, nobody gets them done for me, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm not too. I have to say, colleges and camels have had to put the ads back onto the videos because we're actually at rock bottom in terms of what we make from YouTube. They just milk us basically. But I think we make about over last year we made £1 a day, and that's how we do. But anyway, that's that. It's not really why we're here. We're here for the fun of it. So, but thank you very much, folks, and take care of yourselves no matter where you are. And we'll see you tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. In the meantime, all the best. Good night. Take care. Bye bye. do, 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 do.